Hey, my name is Craig Keys. I'm here today with Track Shaker. We're going to help you spruce up your boring help you with track overlay videos. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? What is he talking about? And don't worry, we'll get there, at least one of the answers to those questions today. And I'm sure you've seen videos from other drivers on track, and they have all this crazy data on there. You know, track maps, engine RPM, lateral G-forces, tire pressures, tire temperatures, engine output, coolant temps, the list goes on. And don't worry, I'm going to help you. We'll get there, but first we need to understand what's the purpose and what's the value of producing data overlays. A wise man once actually never even said that you can't break a record that doesn't exist. One aspect of becoming a better driver is being able to benchmark where you are now and where you want to be. And as you create your data overlays, you'll be able to track what you're doing, what the car was doing, why, analyze that, and learn to be a better driver. I typically categorize track videos into a few different levels. You have your base point of view style videos, you have your action camera only style videos, and then you have your fully data infused videos. Your base point of view style videos maintain a consistent level of simplicity and ease. They focus mainly on the video aspects with less data. These setups include a camera and nothing more, typically placed on the exterior of the vehicle using suction cups or rigid mount, or placed inside the vehicle to gain a point of view perspective, or even a simple dash cam. While this setup doesn't provide you any discrete data, it does allow you to review what you're doing in the car, and if the angle is right within the point of view setup, you can still see your RPM and your speedometer and your hand position depending on the angle of the camera. The next level of track video is your more action camera based. These typically involve your GoPro or Garmin style cameras. These cameras utilize their internal sensors to build base level metrics and data. The majority of these modern cameras utilize their accelerometers, GPS position, ambient sensors, and even add the ability to add external sensors. While this level of video doesn't fully immerse you into all of the data, it is a strong example of pulling in usable data and showing you what is possible. Action cameras that include these type of sensors also include their own proprietary software. This specific software will help you extract the data and allow you to manipulate the gauges, position them, and also understand your usage of the data. Keep in mind, this data is more passively acquired data. You're probably asking, what is passively acquired data? Well, what I mean by this is, speed, for example, is not a direct value. It's calculated by your GPS position with a change in that position. The same goes for lap times, as the camera doesn't discretely know the sector splits or competitive times. G-force, for example, is also the G-force that the camera sees, not the actual G-force that the vehicle is seeing or that you're seeing. So just to let you know, you didn't just pull 3 Gs in your station wagon, your camera fell. Key here is always to use rigid mounts. Last but not least is the most in-depth type of video, and these are fully data infused videos with data overlays. These include action cameras, also a device to pull CAN data from the vehicle and use array software to sync all that together. Unfortunately, there's not a single go-to sensor to utilize, as different vehicles and their security systems block out OBD2 differently from other vehicles. So one sensor that works for you may not work for the next car. These sensors need to be plugged into the OBD2 port. There are many race softwares that are widely available to be used when you're stitching together all these videos. Harry's Lap Timer, Race Render, Track Addict, and many, many more. These programs will allow you to sync your OBD2 data with your video from your action camera, all together to have a fully track infused video with all the data you can imagine that your car can actually export to the camera and the software. This setup is commonly the most complicated and can take some getting used to. For your specific software and your camera and your sensor, you're going to have to learn your own cadence. For example, if you're using Harry's Lap Timer and a Garmin, you may need to start the Garmin first before the program. Or if you're using Track Addict and a GoPro, you may need to start Track Addict for the GoPro. You'll figure that out, don't worry, but just know there's some nuances with this in your specific setup. So make sure prior to going on track, you take time to learn that setup and get familiar and comfortable prior to going out. The worst thing you do is to have a great lap and realize nothing recorded. And also, if your track day vehicle happens to have its own proprietary data software, GM vehicles, you've got it easy. All you got to do is go in there and hit start, hit record, and you're done. So the rest of this video probably is going to help you because they made it really simple for you. You're probably wondering what's needed to get started. Well, first and foremost, you're going to need an actual method to record all this, an action camera ideally. HD action camera specifically, to make sure your videos look good and they're not choppy. You're going to want to place this action camera either within the cabin of the vehicle or outside. A dash cam is also a good, acceptable secondary video source. You'll need a PC or Mac for your post-processing of the data using its respective software. Please note, this may not be required if you're using phone-based race software, especially if you're okay with the default gauge setup and location. Now, for fully customizable data overlays, this list gets a little bit longer. You'll need a smartphone and a mount, your race software loaded onto that smartphone and your computer as well. And finally, you'll need a compatible OBD2 Bluetooth device. And don't forget, you're going to need a camera after I'll record this, because that's what we're doing. How do they attach to the car? Well, your cameras can be mounted in multiple locations along the vehicle. Body panels, bumpers, even tow hooks. They can be mounted to your helmet as well. However, this can create false G-force metrics. Remember, we talked about that. Your OBD2 Bluetooth device will be plugged into your vehicle's OBD2 port, and that's going to be dependent on vehicle location. All right, so what you're going to do first, obviously you're going to need your OBD2 connector. Here we're using the Kiwi 3. There's lots of different brands you can utilize, but the Kiwi 3 is something that's worked for me in a few of my vehicles. So you'll plug this into your vehicle first and foremost, and there's a bunch of lights on this. Make sure that it's lit up and it's showing that you have Bluetooth connectivity, you have power as well. One quick way to make sure that it's transmitting is you download the Kiwi app or whatever app for your device, and make sure that it's actually transmitting data. There's multiple apps you can use to test out and validate that it's sending data back and forth. So down here is your port. I got my device. Make sure it's lined up correctly. I'm gonna plug my, you see it all lit up. So it's got power and it's got Bluetooth connectivity. Once you confirm that you're actually sending data to the phone and the phone is talking to the device, get your phone and you'll pull up your whatever track app you're using. For me, I like Track Addict Pro and Harry's Lap Timer. Within those different apps, you'll be able to go to your settings, and it has different inputs. Camera, external camera, OBD2 input. Turn on OBD2 and set it for whatever sensor you're using, and then let it sync. It'll tell you when it's connected, and then you're good to go on that aspect. And if you're going to tie in your camera with your app, which is always recommended so it all syncs together, you'll use your action camera. I'm using a Garmin Verve U30. I like Garmin. GoPro's great too, but I like Garmin especially because of the G-Metric suite. And if you're not familiar with G-Metric suite, similar to most of these action cameras, they have their own software that they use. G-Metrics is kind of cool in my opinion because it allows you, also if you're not using race software, it can sync up with an OBD2 device as well. So you'll be able to go on your app, on your camera, go to Bluetooth, and it can pair with the device and start pulling vehicle data. So when you upload your video to your computer, you can go there and actually pull in some vehicle channels. So it's almost like a race software light, for example. You can get horsepower, engine temps, coolant temps, RPM, and that's actual live data that's being transmitted and synced up. So it's a good middle ground software if you don't want to use a full race software. Your phone will need to be rigidly mounted to your vehicle as well, and easily accessible so you can start it and stop it depending on your software, if it auto detects your position and where you're on track based on your GPS. Now for some helpful tips and tricks. Number one, always ensure you're mounting to a rigid location, the most rigid object you possibly can within the car or on the car. This goes for both your camera and your phone. This will not only improve the quality of your video, but also the data that your sensors are able to produce and pick up. So we talked before of good ways to mount your phone and bad ways to do it, and make sure things are rigid to the vehicle. This is an example of a commonly used mount where you mount your phone, your camera on here, and you wrap this around an object. This is an example of a bad mount. See how it rattles, and it's never going to get a really good grip on anything. So your data is going to be just as good as your mount. So it's shaking around, your camera's shaking around, your phone's shaking around. It's Craig's vote of the worst mount. Next would be something like this. Now you have a good easy suction cup to the window. You have one point of movement here, a second point of movement here, and your phone sits in here. A little bit of shake. This can get loose, that can get loose. And this isn't super tight, but it'll hold. This isn't terrible, but it's still not that great. As far as phone mounts, this is my favorite style. You have a singular suction mount, and also when you kind of step back, look at the distance there, the phone mounts. Most people understand torque. This moment arm right here is a lot longer than this, so it's going to apply a lot more force down here at the bottom of this mount. It'd be easier to knock that mount off in a hard corner. This is a smaller moment arm, so it's going to generate less force down here. And also have a better chance of keeping this thing stuck and in place when you're hitting those hard corners, and your phone isn't going to be, pulling around and yanking on this as much. You open this up, stick your phone inside, you clamp it, adjust your position here, tighten it down real good, and you put this on the window. And it also has that positional suction to make sure you get a good clamp. So probably one of my favorites for phone mount, this style. And also this one is extremely rigid, but the downside is you don't have a lot of place to put it. So you can clamp this on, and you can really get a good clamp force on this. So this thing is not going anywhere at all. So this is an example of a very rigid mount, which is great for especially this is your 3-prong camera type setup where it accepts your different camera mounts or your standard action camera mounts. This is great. It's really rigid. You can really crank this down a lot, and it's not going to move. Only part about this that's not so great is it doesn't give you as many options to rotate, so you're kind of stuck on having to mount this to something and have a specific angle. And as you add more different points of adjustment to this, those are also points where things can get loose or rattle around. So when it's time to put it in the car, obviously we're going to have our mount, and I'm not angling this in any perfect way, just to kind of give you an example. We place our phone right here, so it's stuck in the mount, and then we place the mount up here on the window, and I use that to suction it in. And granted, the next steps this is pointed at the sky, so you're gonna have terrible footage except clouds unless you're into that. You're gonna want to position this a certain way so it gets a good angle, and this is kind of where your creativity comes in mind to make sure that you're getting a good view directly in front of you. So you'll get a good spot here, make sure it's seeing what you want it to see, and then there you go. It's gonna record. But also, once you do this, remember, rigid. Make it rigid as possible. So once you get your position, tighten down your screws. Make sure that it's where you want it to be, so it doesn't move around. Make sure it's nice and tight, so when the car moves, this is still some movement here, and this isn't tight enough, so you want to crank it down so it actually holds its whole place, so your video is seamless, and it's not, it doesn't need a lot of stabilization correction afterwards in your post-processing, that it looks good, it's clean, and it's able to pull good data for you. I know before we talked about the different styles of cameras, GoPro, Garmin, whatever. I prefer Garmin. One other reason is the quick activation button up here. When this camera's on my head, I can't see what's happening, but I can take this button, I can hit that, and now recording. It's an easy record button. So right now I'm recording you, you're recording me. That was all it took. Now we're ready to roll. So back to the software. What we're going to be doing there is once you get your action camera set up, it'll prompt you for an external camera. With that external camera, you'll get that connected. So at that point, you have your camera connected, your OBD2 connected, and your phone mounted in your vehicle. So once you're ready to go, you'll have your phone powered up. And you're at the starting line. You're getting queued up. You go to your software. If you haven't already picked your track, you want to pick your track because these software is really good. They know competitive times, they know your sector splits, they can put together theoretical best laps for you. So you'll pick your track, you'll hit started. Most of these will say, it's waiting on you to move. Once it detects movement, that's when we'll start going. So you hit it, your flag man tells you it's time to go out on track, you're good to go. Drive a good line, be safe, and then rock and roll from there. Once you're finished up for the day or that track session, turn it off. It'll all combine itself in the background, and you have a good file there. You'll export that to your computer for the final post-processing if that's what you want to do. Also utilize a data trigger once recording. This will help in the post-processing if you found that video's data has shifted a few seconds. What exactly is a trigger? Well, in my many years as a test engineer, we use data triggers to help synchronize multiple data and video streams to ensure accuracy. Now, how does this translate for being on track? Well, this could be as simple as measuring voltage or speed or sound across a very inconspicuous channel, or say for a vehicle, a horn or a throttle blip, and using that to help synchronize your data. If you know in your video that you hear a horn at 1:30, but the video shows it at 1:35, shift it 5 seconds and you have an easy way to sync your video up. Always use a data trigger. It makes your life much easier. It'll save you from many hours of post-processing headaches. You're probably wondering how all this looks, when you finished your track day, after all this planning and products have been put together. Well, let's see, let's take a look. So with Race Render here, this is, for example, one of the race programs that you can use called Race Render by HB Tuners. So you're able, this is some base level overlays they already have set up. As I mentioned before, using a dash cam as a secondary video source. Well, this is your secondary video setup where you have a picture in a picture. These are some of your base level and the data overlays. You can select what you want, and once you export your video and your data from your phone app, it will give you a data file and a video file. You upload that to your computer. You'll add your data file and your video file once it prompts you to in this setup here. And then it will import everything into the video, and you can manipulate your gauges, move your gauges around. That's your whole post-processing. And granted, post-processing isn't a super quick task if you want a very good video. Sometimes it takes an hour or two to make a good video, but it's fun. You get to look back at what you did on track. You get to look at how you're driving and see what the car was doing and make a really cool video. By the end of it, it's going to look like Forza or Gran Turismo, and you got really cool stuff to show your friends and family of what you did on track.